So I've been thinking a lot about white privilege, and as black people, do we need to believe in something called white privilege? And what does it say for us as black people when we believe in this concept of white privilege? So white privilege is the concept that no matter what, if you're white, you're doing better than any black person ever because your skin is white. Doesn't matter if you're homeless. Doesn't matter if you're in prison. Doesn't matter. You're doing way better than every black person because your skin is white. So a lot of times these social justice warriors will say, oh, you're white, you don't have to worry about the cops harassing you. Well, I don't worry about cops harassing me. I'm a black woman and I live in Texas. I have actually been to jail for tickets. For 9 days, I went to jail for tickets. And I'm not oppressed. There were more white people in there than black people, to be honest. I know that isn't the norm when it comes to prison sentences, that there are a lot of black people in jail. But I tell you what, a lot of black people deserve to be in jail because of the crimes they commit in their neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods, how's that? See? I moved out of the black neighborhood when I was a kid because my single black mother said, you know what? People are breaking into our place all the time and we're not safe here. So you know what we did? We moved to the first white neighborhood that we could afford. It happened to be a trailer park, and we were the first black people in this trailer park. But it was safe. We never got robbed when I lived there. And I actually grew up in a town called White Settlement as a little black kid in Texas. And I do not feel oppressed. I got to go to college, and my SAT scores were not that high. They weren't really high enough to just grant me admission. But I had to get a little interview, and they probably saw, oh, black female, let her in. There's probably some white kid with more qualifications than me, better SAT scores, who didn't get in because I did. I have privilege. When I went to Ghana recently, there were black people in the first class section and white people back there in coach. There's no such thing as white privilege. If you are getting bent out of shape by me saying there's no such thing as white privilege, then you're a black person that loves your victim status and you got a big fat chip on your shoulder that Mr. Steinberg put there through the media that you bought into. Or you're a white person who has some sort of social justice-y kind of white guilt and yet superiority thing going on, that you feel that you are superior and that you do have privilege, and you kind of, want to keep that, and you don't want somebody like me saying, wait a minute, no, you're not privileged. If you go to work every single day and you work a 40-hour work week or more, you're not privileged. If you pay taxes, you're not privileged. You got a mortgage, you got a car payment, you're not privileged. If you had to apply for your job, you're not privileged. The real privileged people in our society are probably more like the movie makers, the politicians, etc., etc. And all of those people happen to be Jewish. So if we were to really break it down, say that Jewish people have privilege, not white people, not black people. Black people probably actually, due to affirmative action, have more privilege than white people. I had a friend whose husband, they're both white, he kind of fell on some hard times before they got together, and he went to get some food stamps. They told his ass to go get a job. He didn't get any food stamps. But if I were to make like 5-6 babies, I'd get a house, I'd get food stamps, I'd get some cash. So that's privilege. The real people that are oppressed in our society are probably white men. Those are the real oppressed people, because there's this campaign against white men that is it's really quite contrived. And it's really transparent. If you have any kind of IQ, you can see through this rubbish. And that's why the anti-social justice movement has so many fans. I, for one, am also a fan because I don't want people policing language. I don't want people pulling out my race card and throwing it on the table whenever they see fit that don't really like black people. The social justice warriors, I find, are the most racist of all. Whenever I say white privilege is a myth, they're the ones that get angry, and they say they feel sorry for me. Why do you feel sorry for me? Because I don't feel like a victim. You know, I'm sitting here telling you from my own experience. Black woman in Texas. Been to Europe. I've traveled, okay? Been in Africa. I know what it's like in other places. And I still don't feel oppressed here in Texas. You know what? If someone doesn't like me, the fuck do I care? I have so many friends. I have family. I have people that do like me. And I don't care if someone in their heart hates black people. They probably have a valid reason. If I don't like a certain group of people, I have my own history with that group of people that I refer to, and I say, you know what, whenever I'm around them, it's a bad smell, or there's a, you know, bunch of fucking fighting or something like that, and I don't want to be around those people. So that is my choice. And you say, hey, it's wrong to raise people, you know, that if you're a racist, you shouldn't raise children. I don't think you should feed your children McDonald's. I think if you take your children to McDonald's, you should have your children taken from you. That's my opinion, okay? And if somebody wants to say, hey, honey, I don't want you to hang out with this group, you know, and they want to raise their kids that way, that's none of our goddamn business. As long as someone doesn't touch you and hurt you in some way, you know, physically, who gives a damn what they think? If someone doesn't like your group, get over it. Get over it. Find some friends that do like you. Friends and family. That's what you got in this world. Friends and family. And if you don't have friends, it's probably because you're unpleasant or you're a whiny bitch baby. So, that's my rant about that. If you don't like, you know, a certain group of people, if you choose to be racist, great. Great. I don't care. As long as people are nice and get me the things I want when I'm out and about and they're serving me, or, you know, I don't care. I don't care if someone secretly doesn't like me. And I would encourage everyone else to just kind of grow up. And if someone doesn't like you, get the fuck over it and find yourself some friends. And if you can't find friends, look to yourself and become more pleasant. That's my advice.
You know, this is the agenda in the Middle East right now, to establish Greater Israel. If anybody wants to understand the magnitude of the ethnic cleansing agenda in the Middle East, then you have to read the book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, by a Jewish historian by the name of Ilan Pappé. And Ilan Pappé himself says, anybody who believes that the Zionists will stop this outrageous agenda before they have rid the whole region of the non-Semite peoples, which is ridiculous, of course, because they are all Semite anyway, but the non-Jewish people, he said they live in a world of delusion. So where are all the people that they're trying to get out of Greater Israel, everything that lies between the Nile and the Euphrates, where are they going?
Europe. Yes.
Let me share with you an interview that Peter Sutherland gave with the BBC on June 21st, 2012. In that interview, he said the EU should undermine national homogeneity. He said the EU should, member states Peter Sutherland told peers the future prosperity of many EU states depended on them becoming multicultural. Multicultural. He went on and said, we still nurse a sense of our homogeneity and difference from others, and that's precisely what the European, in my view, should be doing its best to undermine. This is the guy, by the way, he's the founding Director General of the World Trade Organization, which he took over in 1994. He was chairman of BP, he's still chairman of Goldman Sachs International, he was on the board of Royal Bank of Scotland when it collapsed. He was one of the prime movers in bankrupting Ireland. Although he wasn't present, he was on the phone at the meeting that was held between Brian Cow and Brian Lenihan and the head of Bank of Ireland and Anglo-Irish, telling them that the Irish government needed to underwrite all the assets and liabilities of Irish banks, effectively taking Ireland into bankruptcy. So this is the type of individual that we're dealing with here. Peter Mandelson said, immigrants, we sent out search parties to get them to come and made it hard for Britons to get work. The corporatocracy loves this because the corporatocracy is smelling minimum wage. Minimum wage and 0 hours contracts for those positions that they can't automate. And the more a corporation is able to reduce its employee costs by reducing payroll to minimum wage or 0 hours contracts, the higher their salary gets. So, the differential in earnings is the most extreme it's ever been. The distribution of wealth in this country is going all in one direction, whilst the country goes bankrupt. And that's the same everywhere. So how are we going to get the British public to agree to masses of immigrants coming into a country? Oh, it's very simple, really. We just play on their emotions. Now, this is not a black and white argument, because what the media is trying to present is that there's only 2 points of view. One is, open the floodgates and let them all in. And the other point of view is, don't let any of them in. And of course, what that does is it pitches the two extreme views against each other. So for those who say, let them all in, the other groups are racist. And for those who say, let them all in, then basically, they're like, you're destroying the country, you're destroying the nature of the country. So what it's doing is it's shutting down debate. It's shutting down discussion, because there's a middle ground. Of course, we're bombing the crap out of these countries. We're destroying the infrastructure of these countries. So of course we've got a responsibility to do something with the displaced people. But to open the floodgates?
That's what happened in Germany to get Hitler to parry extreme right and extreme left.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The easiest way for any government to get its agenda through is to pitch the population against each other and polarize the viewpoints. Coudenhove-Kalergi. Count Coudenhove-Kalergi was an Austrian aristocrat, and in the 1920s he wrote a series of books, and the most well-known book is called Pan-Europa. And in Pan-Europa he makes the case for the destruction of nation states in Europe through mass migration. And what he says is basically we have to destroy nation states so that they just become effectively slave workers. And he says we can then have a combined Europe ruled, and I quote, by the traditional aristocracy and the spiritual There is elite. An annual award, a Coudenhove-Kalergi award, which is awarded to the international statesman who is perceived to have done the most to perpetuate this goal.
Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel is a winner, as is Tony Blair, as is Peter Sutherland, as is Peter Mandelson.
And Van Rompuy.
And Van Rompuy, exactly. So you know, of course, there are people who say, no, that's just rampant conspiracy theory. Yes, of course it's a rampant conspiracy theory, but it's true. Those who are conspiring have left the evidence for us to read for ourselves and to determine whether or not we are going to allow it to unfold. Because they're telling us what's happening. And this is why what we're seeing is this mass migration. The vast majority of the people coming are not Syrians, and has been observed, they're not families. They are single young men, and they are migrating from the countries who either make up Greater Israel or are in the adjoining countries there.
If you are ever trying to make somebody else do what you want them to do, it's not very efficient and also quite often counterproductive to try to force that person to do what it is you want. Instead, what you want to do is make the other person think they want to do it for themselves. Make the other person think they need to do what you want them to do. That's actually the only way to efficiently make someone do something you want them to do. The same is true in sales and business. The first proposition of all business is self-gain. You're trying to make money for yourself or for your corporation. Now, it's not very efficient to scream at people and demand that they buy what it is you are offering. Instead, what you want to do is take the necessary steps to make people think they need what it is you are offering. Make them feel like it's a necessity. Then you'll sell your product. Every person in politics or in business, every successful person in corporation understands this most basic principle of human nature, human psychology. Now, why is it relevant to our current political situation? Because we are currently involved in a three-stage process designed to make you want something that you do not actually need. Designed to force you to accept something which you don't really need. 3 stages. The first stage we've already passed through. We're currently enduring the second stage, moving into the third and final stage of complete transformation. The first stage was commonly referred to by the media as war on terror. Okay? What it was basically was Western governments, bankers and people behind the Western governments that you do not see, using the Western military without the informed consent of the general public to invade the Middle East for freedom, for democracy, for oil and resources, a number of other different excuses. But really it was about something bigger than that. Stirring up Islam. Making an enemy out of Islam. Islam, you have to imagine, is like a big wasp nest in the Middle East. Surprisingly, if you leave it alone and you stay away from it, unless it has really good cause, it's not going to give you any trouble. However, if you go into that area where the wasp is located, the wasp nest is located, and you keep that nest, you stamp holes in it, and then you go back home, you're going to stir it up. You're going to give it reason to hit you back, reason to hate you. And that was the whole purpose of the war on terror. It wasn't about freedom or peace or democracy. It wasn't about oil and resources, not necessarily. Maybe some rich corporations and companies capitalised on the situation and made some money for themselves, but that was just a side issue. Fundamentally, it was about stirring up Islam, making them hate us and us hate them. Stage 2. Refugees. Stage 1, stir them up, create refugees. Western activity in the Middle East has made things far worse than they ever were in the Middle East before. ISIS and other various extremist organisations, fundamentalist Islamic groups, jihad, it's all, realistically, the result of Western interference in the Middle East. So, keep that nest, stir up those wasps, and then start letting them all in. Let's imagine that you live in a house, okay? This is your house here, if you can see that. Now, on this side of you, you have a neighbour, and on that side of you, you have a neighbour. This neighbour over here is an Aussie, and this one over here is a Muslim family. And this neighbour tells you, those people over there are terrorists, jihadists, they don't like us very much. Their wife married their son or their cousin or whatever it is they do. Tells you that these people are horrible people. And you start to get angry and confused. So you leave your property, cross over into theirs, rip doors off the hinges, kick holes in the walls, slap the wife, bash the man, spit on the floor, wipe your muddy boots on their carpet, and then you go back home. Okay? Now what do you do when you get back home? Do you lock your doors and your windows to protect yourself from retaliation? Or do you open your doors up, open your windows up, and put a big sign at the front saying, everyone welcome, inclusion, diversity? Because that's exactly what our country and other Western countries have done. Not the people. The people are not responsible for this. Not Italian people, not English people, not German people, not Australian people. However, it is the people that will suffer the consequences, not the governments. Not the hidden hand behind the government, certainly not. It is us, which Islam holds responsible for what happened in the Middle East, for the so-called war on terror. So, Western powers go into the Middle East, stir up that nest, go back home and open up their borders. They don't secure their borders and prepare for counter-attack. No, they open them up. And the liberal leftists spring to action. Anti-racism, pro-refugee nonsense. You'll notice that in the last 15 years the media has done a complete backflip. Back 10, 15 years ago, all Muslims were terrorists, threats, just horrible Arab people. But now, in stage 2, the media talks about not all Muslims are terrorists. It places emphasis on the fact that there are Muslims in our society who are good people. It tries to use individual examples of Muslims, clean-cut, professional, well-spoken, intelligent Muslims, as a representative example of the entire group. Now the media does the opposite. Now it's those nationalists, those patriots, those conservatives who are the bad guys. The people who are trying to prevent this beautiful humanitarian process from taking place. Okay? But what's it leading to? Why do all the big powers in the world support this? Why is the Pope, billionaire EU commissioners, United Nations, mass media, governments all around the world, actors, celebrities, why do they all come out in support of this nonsense? And why do they attack people so ruthlessly who try to do what is just basic common sense, close the borders and protect ourselves? Because it's all parts of a process. Then we go into stage 3. What is stage 3? Well, eventually society ceases to function properly. racism has become so bad, clashes and conflicts so severe, that a white guy cannot walk to the store to do his shopping without possibly being shot or decapitated by Muslim gangs, and vice versa. A Muslim person cannot walk to the store to buy his meat or whatever he gets without possibly being beat up by Aussie gangs, Aussie kids. Okay, everything's so bad, everything ceases to function, and for a couple of years, home invasions, violence, murders are just commonplace. And so the people are ready for a saviour. A saviour, a new form of administration. It's time for global government, they say. It's time for something strong that isn't going to allow all of this racism anymore. No more conflicts, no more division, no more street brawls, no more terrorism. We need a good, strong system of government. All the people left, they all support it. They all say, yes, this is what we need. We need this in order to feel safe and secure again. And that's it. A three-stage process. Create an enemy. Kick that wasp nest and stir it up. Give it reason to hate you. Go back home afterwards, but don't lock your doors. Don't close your borders. Open them up. Let them in. Put liberal leftists in power, in media, government, education. Make sure that anybody who wants to do what ought to be done and just build a big wall, stop these people from coming in, prevent this process from taking place, make sure these people are all portrayed as horrible, racist, Nazi, evil, criminal people. Use me for an example. Do you think you'll ever see a positive report on my character in the media? Has the media ever given me an opportunity to explain myself? Will it ever? No. I'm a heretic. I'm a problem for this process. I'm not contributing to it. I'm trying to prevent it from taking place. Because this, when society collapses, it's going to be, the circumstances are going to be horrible. Something you can't imagine. What you've seen in war films, in history, people burning alive, dying on the streets, starving, civil war, genocide, it's going to be commonplace for a good couple of years at least. Until enough time has passed for the same people who created this problem, the same big money powers, to present themselves as the solution. We have a solution for you now, they say. No more Australia, no more different countries and nationalities, no more racist nonsense, just big, strong, socialist global administration to give us safety and security once more. And what is most ridiculous, or what is most unfortunate, I think, is all of those liberal leftists in the second stage who started up community organisations against racism, took all that money from the government, spread about all of their propaganda, worked to bring all those refugees in because diversity. After the revolution takes place, after society collapses and a new form of administration is imposed or is requested by the people who are in turmoil, those liberal leftists, guess what they get? Knock at the door, new secret police or some form of government agency says, you, come with us, you're under arrest. They take you out into the bush, kneel down in front of that pit, boom, and they shoot you. Why? Because you're a threat to the new administration. They don't want activists. It doesn't matter if you're an anarchist or a conservative right-winger or a nationalist. It doesn't matter. You'll all get that knock at the door. As soon as society ceases to function, as soon as they are ready to impose their new form of administration, ready to convince people that it is necessary in order to fix all of the problems with racism, racial and religious clashes that they have created, they'll knock on your door, drag you out into the bush, and they will shoot you. No more gay activism, no more feminist activism, no more anarchism, no more nonsense on the streets. No more right wing, no more left wing, no more social divisions, no more Marxism, no more National Socialism. Just good, strong, bland proletariats, no activists. And what is most tragic about this situation is history shows that it doesn't matter how clear I am in explaining this. All of those liberal leftists, they won't see the reality until the boot of the military is crushing down on their skulls. Some of them might see it, but not all of them. Not very many. So what can you do? What can you do to prevent this process, or to assist in preventing this process? The answer, believe it or not, is not diversity is our greatest strength, is not just to get along. It doesn't matter how much propaganda you try to spread about, encouraging people to get along, equality, diversity. No, because the reality is, the more different people of different cultures, different ethnicities, different religions, customs, traditions, heritage, the more racism you have. The more different people living together in the same place, the more racism there's going to be. It's inevitable. And those in power pushing for refugee intake, they know it. Refugees equals racism. The more there is, the more racism there's going to be. The more conflict and clashing between groups, the more division there's going to be. The faster we can move into the final stage of crisis and the imposition of a new administration of governments. Socialist global administration, which will not be the administrative power of liberal leftism. No. Liberal leftism only has one purpose: destroy existing society, ruin it, and prepare it for collapse. And then afterwards, come with us. Boom. You've served your purpose. That's the truth. And I'm hated so much because I tell the truth. Nobody in this society today is more hated than someone such as myself. What I'm telling you right now, this video is heresy. Really, it is. To critique all of the abstractions, equality, diversity, inclusion, is heresy. But ask yourself, what is there to gain for me in telling you this? You'll hear from mainstream journalism and social powers, opposition political factions, that I am just a crazy, racist, Nazi, criminal person that you should not listen to. I've pretty much made myself unemployable. It's fortunate that I have a trade because I can work for myself. I don't have to kiss the feet of some employer who demands that I cease my political activity because I'm making his company look bad. I don't have to worry about that, but a lot of people do. But why would I put myself through all of this? Through all of the slander, social, financial, asphyxiation, just to tell you nonsense for no reason? They hate me. The media, the journalists, political opponents, they hate me because I tell you the truth. So spread the truth. Share the message. See if we can prevent our country from falling into this crisis.
In light of recent events, let's have an honest conversation about racism in the Western world, something that I think the mainstream media and modern academia has failed to provide. Let's begin by pointing out something that should be obvious, but is difficult for liberal media and academics to swallow. The most racist and bigoted people on Earth are not whites. In fact, the most racist and bigoted people on Earth are in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. There was a metadata analysis of worldwide surveys asking people simple questions like, would you be okay living next to someone of a different race and culture? According to the surveys, the most racist and bigoted countries on Earth isn't America or England or Germany, it was India. More so, not a single Western European country made the top 25 list of most racist and bigoted countries. The only white majority country that made the list was Russia. They were 20. The top 10 most racist and bigoted countries in descending order are the following: India, Lebanon, Bahrain, Libya, Egypt, Philippines, Kuwait, Palestine, South Africa, and South Korea. The link to the survey is in the description below. Let me make this point crystal clear. I want the left to understand that when they make the argument that white people are somehow more racist than other people, they're wrong. White people are the most tolerant and accepting. This picture provided by the Washington Post gives us a great visual representation of how tolerant and accepting the Western world is compared to the rest of the planet. As you can see, the bluer a country is, the more tolerant and accepting they are of living next to people of different races and cultures. The more red they are, the less tolerant and less accepting they are. Clearly, as you can see, India, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, and Nigeria are the least tolerant and accepting of living next to different races and cultures, while the Western world and South America are the most tolerant and accepting. Look at the English-speaking world, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. Look at the Nordic countries. Look at the Iberian Peninsula. They are the least racist and bigoted people, yet if you turn on the television, if you crack open a college sociology textbook, they'll tell you the exact opposite. They'll brainwash you into thinking that whites are racist, to demonize and race bait when the facts point the other way. It is colored people who are the least tolerant and accepting. If we had reliable data on African racism and bigotry, for example, the whole continent would burn a dark red, like India. Blacks are not nearly as tolerant and accepting as whites are as a whole, and we don't need data on African countries to know this. We can use data on African Americans to give us at least an idea. In 1990, Congress passed the Hate Crime Statistics Act, which required the Attorney General to collect data about crimes which manifest evidence of prejudice based on race, religion, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. Ever since that act, the FBI and criminal justice departments have had reliable records on the number of hate crimes committed in America and who the offenders are. In 2013, whites made up 54% of offenders of hate crimes, despite being 64% of the U.S. population. That means whites disproportionately do not commit hate crimes on average. Blacks, on the other hand, made up 24.3% of all hate crime offenders, despite being 12% of the U.S. population. That means blacks, on average, disproportionately commit hate crimes. Think about it. We're told by the liberal media and academia that whites are racist. Only whites can commit hate crimes. But when you step back and look at the data, it's clear that only one group of people have a tendency to commit hate crimes. Only one group of people are disproportionately, factually more racist and bigoted in America, and that group of people are fellow blacks, my fellow blacks. Look, I'm not doing this to defend white people. I honestly couldn't care less about race. My personal interests revolve around anime and economics. I'm doing this to defend objective reality. I'm looking at the stats, crunching the numbers, and forming an opinion based on the evidence. And the evidence is clear. Whites and white countries are the least racist and the least bigoted. Whites commit less hate crimes on average. Whites are far more tolerant and accepting than any other race on the planet besides maybe Latin Americans. Therefore, the liberal media and academia should honestly report the facts instead of lying to the world by saying whites are somehow more racist than others. They're not. They're in fact less racist. I'm going to end off this video by saying this. What breeds genuine hatred for people is misconception, a misunderstanding of reality. If you're black and all the information you get is from the mainstream media and academia, you're most likely going to start hating white people. Don't be part of the problem. Arm yourself with knowledge, empirical truth, and expose the truth to people who want to push their agenda of needless hatred and bigotry against whites. I'm Jay Feza from the Rebel.media. If you use logic and empirical data to formulate your opinions, like and subscribe to the Rebel.media. We do too.
I've long forgotten your name.